the name of John Crotty, was an accomplice with Mark Herman. To the best of his knowledge and to the best of my knowledge, that finding was never pursued any further. Do you know why that was not pursued?
I believe that I did speak with Chief Investigator of the State Attorney's Office, Ralph Wiles, as to that issue, because I certainly reviewed the report myself in preparing for both the motion for post-conviction relief and the clemency proceeding. And the basis was that Mr. Wiseman, although putting that statement into the report, had not uncovered significant evidence, or any evidence, to prove that Crotty was involved. Now, there were various other factors. I think that, I'm not sure, again, going back into the facts of this case, but many of these people died. One died in a car accident, one died mysteriously, one was murdered in either Broward or Miami. Many of the people involved, cohorts of Mr. Herman, were killed or died or were no longer available to have statements taken of them. I'm not sure if Mr. Crotty was one of those or not.
How have you answered on behalf of David Bloodworth the allegations that the Weissman report was suppressed?
The Weissman report had never been suppressed. It had been fully available for the press, for anyone that had wanted to come up to see it. It was in David Bloodworth's office in West Palm Beach. It never attracted any attention for anyone to come and see it.
Mr. Barlow, when was the Weissman report available to members of the media?
When I first reviewed all the evidence, all the boxes, there were many, many different boxes. The report was in that box, or in one of the many boxes that contained the police reports and the investigation in this case.
Do you recall the date that would have been that you saw the report?
When I first saw the report? Probably would have been in October of 1986. The motion for post-conviction relief didn't begin until December of that year.
Do you know for a fact that report was available to the media prior to that time?
I was told that by both David Bloodworth and Ralph Wiles, who was the chief investigator of the state attorney's office, that it had always been made available to all members of the press and public that wanted to review it in the state attorney's office.
I have you saying that Bloodworth is saying it was available. I have people saying we tried to get it, it wasn't available. I cannot seem to determine finally whether or not that report was in fact available.
I know that it factually existed. It was on paper, that I supplied it as part of my brief to the governor. It was actually a published report that was sent to the governor, sent to the parole board, sent to the entire cabinet members, and sent to the attorneys of, I can't remember his name at this point, but the man that was representing him at the clemency hearing.
Mr. Mintzberg.
No, it wasn't Mr. Mintzberg at the clemency proceedings. Mr. Mintzberg represented... Johnson, I think it was, yes.
I understand that, but that was approximately 7 or 8 years after the report had supposedly been finished. And it was released to Mr. Edwards, who finally was given access to the files 7 years after the conviction.
I can only tell you that when I came and was asked to again look into the case, to do the motion for post-conviction relief, to present the state's case as to the clemency hearings, that it was clearly available to me. It had been told to me that it was clearly available to any members of the public or the press that would review it at any prior time. It existed, and I did publish it to the governor.
Okay.
Can't tell you what happened 7 years before.
Yeah, I understand.
There was an article maybe a year ago, less, in which, when this came up again during Mark's original clemency proceedings before the governor, that David Bloodworth said that the report that I submitted was always available to the press or the public at any time. And I said that was just untrue. And the reason I said that was untrue is because if it was available at any time, then why wasn't it available at the time that Tim Pallison from the Herald requested it and others had requested it? And I just don't know why that report, if it didn't have any bearing on the guilt or innocence of Mark Herman, wasn't made available during that period of time in which it may have made a factor or a difference.
Was there anything about your investigation of John Crotty that made you suspicious?
Crotty told me the theory of this Jake the Snake killing Kreuzler. As we trace the history of it, it became apparent to me that Crotty knew enough information about the murder weapon, the color of the shells, the kind of car that was driven, that wasn't available to the general public. So that I believe he was more of an accomplice than a witness.
How do you personally feel about the guilt or innocence of Mark Herman, and on what do you base your opinion?
Well, I believe that Mr. Herman is innocent. I wouldn't have gone to the clemency hearing at my own expense if I didn't. And I base it on the information that I obtained when I was an assistant state attorney about the people involved in that report. I base it on the assistance that was given to Mr. DeNono, which I don't know of any other time in the annals of the times that I've been in this county for 13 years, approximately, in which the prosecutor's office and the police department, sheriff's office, came to the assistance of some convicted murderer who had previously committed a number of heinous crimes, who was ready to be sentenced to death, and asked the judge for leniency on that person's behalf, as well as the recantation of Dexter Coleman. Those things trouble me.
I have known Joel for a long time. He began working in the state attorney's office when I was still there, and I respect Joel's opinions. But I will not defer to Joel's opinions without knowing what the basis of those opinions are. I've never read the Weissman report. I have heard about it, obviously. It's been referenced in the press. I haven't read it. I wouldn't change my opinion based upon the fact that I am told by someone else, without knowing why, that Joel has his doubts.
Joe Mintzberg, who took over the Herman case in 1985, pro bono, presented the Weissman findings in his first appeal to the appellate courts.
It was important in this sense. These witnesses, all the people that pointed their finger towards John Crotty, a man by the name of Larry Moore, and Crotty's wife, Diane Crotty, were the key witnesses pointing to John Crotty, were in fact known to the defense in this case. And no effort was made to either acquire their testimony prior to trial or to present them as witnesses at the time of trial. We fault Seppi again for having available to him testimony indicating that some third party, other than Herman, had more of a motive and more of an opportunity to kill Kreuzler than Herman did. And he failed to present that line of testimony at the time of trial. You'd have to ask the prosecutor's office why they did not pursue the conclusions reached in the Weissman report. I can't speak to that.
Jim Edwards' investigations put a couple of pieces together which he believes could be significant. However, no one has come up with any evidence to prove this theory. A confidential memo from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to then Assistant State Attorney Jack Scarola talks about a Mr. Horan overhearing a conversation that fingers a Richard and Phil in a hit in Palm Beach. Richard and Phil were described as auto mechanics. In the Weissman report, John Crotty is mentioned as possibly being involved. John Crotty's real name is Richard Cooper. He lived with a fellow by the name of Phil, who was deposed by Weissman in October 1978 and is named in his report.
This Mr. Horan said he heard a Richard and Phil talking in a bar about a hit they did in Palm Beach. And judging from their conversation, they were auto mechanics from the West Palm Beach area. Phil and Richard Wayne Cooper were auto mechanics from the West Palm Beach area. Quite a coincidence. Now, the Horan incident occurred the same year as the Kreuzler homicide, 1976. In fact, there was a confidential memo issued to Jack Scarola from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement outlining the interviews with Mr. Horan. They only had first names on these individuals, not much to go on, so that report was just filed away. Then, 2 years later, they come up with Mark Herman. They get an indictment, they get a conviction, case closed. But then after the conviction, Mr. Weissman begins investigating. And he comes up with a Richard and Phil, too. But this time, he comes up with some last names. And they're auto mechanics from the West Palm Beach area. Nobody went to go back through the files to put these two things together that were 2 years apart, done by separate agencies. All I'm saying is that I think it's worth taking another look at.
A man by the name of Ronnie Gates, an acquaintance of Mark Herman, said on national television he invented the wrong man theory in exchange for immunity against charges. Dexter Coffin has recanted his testimony, then recanted his recantation. Arthur Baines has recanted his testimony under oath, as did David Wayne Gibson. A polygraph administered in 1977 by Warren Holmes concluded that Herman was deceptive when answering pertinent questions. A polygraph administered by George Slattery in 1980 found that Mark Herman was telling the truth when he said he had no involvement or knowledge of the Kreuzler murder. The alleged confession was determined a forgery by a handwriting analyst hired by the law offices of Mintzberg and Lubin. An assistant state attorney's investigation points to another man as being involved. Mark, you say you were framed. Who and what was behind it?
It all stemmed around political motivations. I think there was a lot of pressure from a lot of political sources to solve this crime. And after a year that it went unsolved, I think there was some people that were in very pressured situations to solve it, and whoever did was going to come out to be a hero.
I don't have any facts to support that assertion of Mark. I don't find it unreasonable for him to believe that. But I personally can't ascribe that reason to any public official in this case.
What was to be gained from it?
DeNorno got out of the death chair. Dexter Coffin got out of jail. Arthur Baines got a break on his case. David Gibson lied himself back into trouble and got 5 more years anyway for coming to my defense. And Mark Herman went to prison.
If I could be convinced, or the state attorney's office could be convinced, or a judge could be convinced that there is, as a consequence of newly discovered evidence, a reasonable doubt about Mark Herman's guilt, then I say bring it up and investigate it, and let's make sure that we have done the right thing. But I'm not aware that any such evidence exists at the present time. There's nothing that's been demonstrated to me that's of sufficient merit to reopen old wounds.
In February, it'll be 10 years since your conviction. And most people look back on 10 years and say, my, how time flies. How do you look back on the last 10 years?
It's been an eternity. You know. I think you find when you're locked up that every day is like a month on the street. Minutes go by like hours.
How have you learned to cope?
Well, I cope I can't even say day by day. I cope hour by hour. And I think I try to stay active in everything. If I'm not doing something, if I'm not playing tennis or handball, I'm jogging, I'm working out on the parallel bars. If I'm not doing that, I'm in the library researching and reading magazines, newspapers, or I'm in at night. I keep a book. I don't enjoy watching TV at night. I enjoy reading. I try to keep a book at night. And I keep everything else out of my mind until the time comes to handle that. And thinking of home is just a no-no, you know. I think of home when I'm writing for help. I write, my letters are a lot stronger, a lot more vibrant, a lot more energy in them. And then I have to pull that curtain. I think the Chinese have a little situation. They have little compartments that they have in their mind. They say that they take this problem, they put it over in this compartment. They take that problem, put it in that one. And they just open each compartment as they approach that problem. And that way they don't OD on it. I think that's kept me pretty healthy throughout the years, mentally and physically. I don't dwell too much on the negative. It doesn't do any good. A lot of these guys here, after they get inside an institution, and people start forgetting about. And in my case, you know, I think the only people that want to forget about it are the ones that framed me, put me in here. And there's too many unanswered questions on this. They have an innocent man sitting here in prison, and I'm not going to let them forget it. And I do everything that I can, as much as I can, year after year after year, to bring myself into the public's spotlight in hopes that maybe that one ear, the right ear, will hear what's happening and do something about it.
The Mark Herman case has been appealed 3 times. A direct appeal based on his trial was affirmed on March 25, 1981. In 1985, Joe Mintzberg applied to the appellate court to reopen the case based on witness recantations. It was denied May 30th, 1985. An ineffective assistance of counsel appeal before the trial court was denied April 22nd, 1986. A rehearing was denied in June of '86. An appeal in appellate court for ineffective assistance of counsel was denied in December 1987. It was ironic that the court handed down that decision only hours after Mintzberg explained to us how he would handle it if he lost.
We will immediately go to federal court, United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida, in a federal habeas corpus petition brought by a state prisoner. We will allege in that petition the exact same ground. That is, Seppi was ineffective at Mark's trial, and we will combine that allegation with the recantation of witnesses saying that Mark was denied due process of law. I'm exceedingly confident that the greatest courts in our country, the federal courts, will look at this case and grant Mark a new trial.
A clemency petition before Governor Graham was unsuccessful as well. Stephen Johnson and other attorneys have offered their services free of charge to petition for clemency on Herman's behalf.
We were unsuccessful, but we're not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. Other members of of Mark Herman's defense team are not going to give up. And we're going to keep going until he has achieved his freedom.
Another clemency is planned for March '88. Will this differ from '87? And how do you view the chances of success this time?
Well, it will differ in the sense that there are no longer any remedies available to Mr. Herman in the state court system. In other words, one of the arguments that was made, or I'm sure could have been in the mind of the governor, was that he had not yet exhausted his appeals in terms of his collateral relief, or what's called a state habeas corpus, or a 3.850 hearing motion to set aside judgment and sentence. We are hopeful that we will be able to reach some and talk to people and reach some people that are influential in the governor's office that will come to realize that this is a serious, terrible injustice that's been done in our state, and that any courageous politician would see this not as something that would be negative in their past, but something that would be a very positive thing that they could do, and would actually bring not national criticism, but national acclaim for bull by the horns and doing it. I believe if the governor votes for a clemency or a pardon, and he has several options available to him. One would be a full pardon. The other would be just to merely waive the mandatory 25-year sentence and let him be eligible for parole. That would be an option. I hope that they take the bull by the horns and see what we see, and that is this man is innocent, and that the criminal justice system has misfired, and here's an opportunity to correct that misfiring of the criminal justice system.
Why do you continue to pursue the answer to the question of who killed Richard Kreuzer?
More so than anything else, it's the fact that it troubles people within the judicial system, with the perception that there was a miscarriage of justice. It troubles judges in particular that have been close to this case, and if they're troubled, I think it's almost an obligation that a reporter becomes troubled by a case like this. And in the conversations I've had through the years with a couple of judges, continues to disturb me. And there's a lot of sentiment within the criminal justice system that this is one blemish that we wish we could rid ourselves of in this county. We can't figure a way to do it, but yet none of us are at the point of being able to say to ourselves in good conscience it doesn't matter.
It matters to Mark Herman. He continues to fight for his release. He has written a book about rape prevention called Rape Prevention Recipes. The reason for the book was to help women, but also to raise money to continue his appeals. And there are personal reasons why Mark Herman is fighting so hard for his release. How has your conviction and your time in prison affected the people you love? I'm thinking in terms of your children, your parents, mother, your wife.
My mother is terribly angry. Luckily for Jack Scarola and David Bloodworth, that she doesn't have a black belt. My son is, my wife was 7 months pregnant when I came to jail. He's still not understanding what's going on. His questions is, Keith, if you're innocent, how come they don't let you out? And how come they won't let you come home? He's grown up to be pretty angry and confused at an unjust justice system. My wife is really a soldier. She's hanging in there real tough amidst suffering an incurable and fatal disease called systemic lupus, which has forced her to stop working. And she's on Social Security right now.
Obviously, with them being in Arkansas, you don't see them too often.
Well, I didn't. Now I'll probably be seeing them once a year right now. Prior to them going to Arkansas, my wife had come up maybe every 3 months, bring the boy. Because this disease almost like having a toothache all over the body all day long. So it's a collagen disease, but it's the internally it tears the muscle tissue away from the bone. So we're satisfied with that. I call them every week. You know, we are two people that we know, where we're each at. I don't require or demand or feel insecure or left out if she doesn't come see me. Because, truthfully, I can't see, when she was working, for her to spend her weekends in a place like this, looking at me, look at her, or my son to get off being able to play with the kids in the neighborhood, to come here and look at his daddy, look at him, and want to know why he can't go home with him. So I preferred, to have, watch each other grow old.
Marcus sensed a lot of pain, but it surprises me that I don't feel more anger. You don't seem, you seem determined that, you're going to find a way to win an appeal. There are things that you can do, and you're working toward them. I expected a lot more anger.
Anger in the penitentiary will get you killed, cause you to kill somebody else, make you grow old quick, bring disease in your body. I think I've suppressed, the anger for self-preservation, because I know that it won't solve anything. All it does is make it worse. And if there was anybody that felt that there was 160 pounds of angry, mad karate guy coming out there, they would never let me out for there, and I would never make it out. I spent my first 5 years in a war zone in the toughest and most brutal penitentiary in Florida, and where people were knifed and stabbed and killed and clubbed and beaten and raped and mugged and, daily. You saw it happen to 5, 10, 15 people every day. Faces bashed in with pipes and stuff. And those are people who've been out there angry. Might have been on society or their wives or somebody else, and they'd take it out on somebody else. And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of what transmits through me will go to and into through my loved ones. I'm out here screaming and hollering and angry and want to kill or choke or beat somebody up or do something because something's happened to me. And I look at some people in life, you go through life and they get cancer, or they might get polio, or they get a leg cut off. Everybody's got problems. This just happens to be mine. And I got to handle it, you know. It's been handed to me. And it's for me to handle. I have to handle it. You know? It's not for me to give to other people to handle. Like my wife, she's got her own problems. She's dying. She needs mine.
You never had a chance to say it at the trial because nobody asked you the question. Did you shoot him?
No. No, I didn't. You know, I don't know who did. And it was a real insult for me for them to portray me as somebody that had to, saying that I was after Billy Clocker, who only had one leg. I had to go shoot somebody through a door like a coward. Or if it was Richard Crusoe, who understand is an old man, and was an older guy then, 40 or 50 or something like that, with everything, that I was the type of person that would cowardly shoot somebody through a door. And I don't care if it was for money, for revenge, for anything. You know, I'm not a coward, I'm not a killer. I'm a man. And I think even through today, I'm handling it. I'm handling it like a man. It's been tough. You know.
We would like your comments on the program you have just seen. Please call 1-800-222-WPBT. That's 1-800-222-WPBT.
Tomorrow at 9, Carl Malden and Lenny Von Dolen star as an explosive father and son who struggle on the job and in their relationship to one another. Joyce Van Patten co-stars in Billy Galvin. Tomorrow at 9 on American Playhouse.
Now, Frontline returns to the New Mexico Penitentiary, site of one of the most violent prison uprisings in American history. Don't miss The Shakedown in Santa Fe on Frontline.